Joining us now, professor of history at Tulane University, Walter Isaacson, and New York Times bestselling author Sebastian Junger. His most recent book is titled Freedom. And Sebastian, in your latest piece for Vanity Fair, you posed the question, can Ukrainian freedom fighters stand up to the Russian military? And you say the answer is yes. History suggests they can. You write in part this: from street corner fistfights to insurgencies and wars, size is a terrible predictor for the outcome of human conflict. Most successful underdog groups have three things in common, and Ukraine has all of them. First, such groups need to have a clear moral purpose with deep roots in the history of the population. Successful underdog groups also require fearless leadership, leaders who are not willing to accept the same risks and hardships as their followers in times of war will not remain leaders for long, and most of their rebellions will fail. The final component of successful underdog groups are women. Putin is facing a moral enemy with brave leadership and heavy female involvement. History shows that if he does not win quickly, he may never win at all. And Sebastian, women are stepping up in Ukraine into the fight.
Yeah, I looked at sort of mixed situations. I mean, this is open warfare, but if you look at sort of the labor movement, the civil rights movement, freedom movements all over the world, that once you get women involved, they bring the sort of moral authority that a group of men in the street, risks looking like just a riot, right? But with women in there, it has to be taken seriously. And despots are actually sometimes hesitant to fire on groups of women in the street. I looked at the labor movement in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1912. And they put women on the front lines facing the bayonets, and that tipped the balance. One police chief said that one cop can handle 10 men, but it takes 10 cops to handle one woman. So there's a real sort of PR disadvantage for the greater power once women are involved.
Yeah, and Walter, it's so fascinating. We've been talking about that for some time. I was talking about it with a friend from the region yesterday, that you not only have women, grandmothers, going up to Russian soldiers and saying very profane things, verbally assaulting them and telling them to get, the heck out of their country. But the Russian soldiers are looking at women who look an awful lot like their grandmothers, some who speak Russian. This has put these young conscripts in a position that most soldiers are not used to being put in.
And when you do things like bomb a maternity hospital, that's when you really help bring people out on the streets, and especially mothers and women. And it makes occupation hard. One of the things history tells us, and Sebastian's piece is all about that too, is that occupations are hard. You occupying Afghanistan, for that matter, the British occupying the colonies. It's in the DNA of people to really protect their homeland, and especially when it becomes a time when women are saying, this is our homeland, you're invading us and you're destroying us.
Yeah, and Sebastian, nations do have characters of their own. Some nations, some people are far more resistant to occupation. We learned that the hardest of ways in Vietnam. We were fighting against a people who were not going to be submissive to the French or to the United Nations or to the United States. You saw that in Afghanistan, and now we're learning something about the Ukrainians. They are not the type of people who are going to sit back and be occupied, especially by a country that killed 3-4 million of them back in the 1930s.
Well, the war looks very much like the war that I saw in Bosnia in the early 90s. And I would say that most peoples would defend their homeland. What's at risk are their families, their children, their history, their dignity. The word freedom comes from the medieval German for the word beloved. In other words, there's a close tie between the sense of freedom and dignity we all want and the people we love, and how do we protect them from predation.
Yeah, Walter, it's so fascinating. We feared the Russian disinformation war in the United States for years. There have been some people on the Trump right and Trump himself that would often parrot Putin talking points. What's been so fascinating here is how the Ukrainians have absolutely destroyed Russia in their efforts. One of the most telling instances is that story of the grandmother walking up to the Russian soldier, swearing at him, saying, "Get out of my neighborhood, but here, put these sunflower seeds in your pocket so when you're dead in the soil, at least sunflowers will grow." That story made it from a village in Ukraine all the way to one of my child's classes in the United States, where all the kids, Republicans and Democrats alike, were just mesmerized by the story. And there's one instance of that after another. Russia is losing their misinformation war.
Well, one of the things we always try to study is whether or not the free flow of information, which the internet and so many forms of social media do, helps democracy and individual freedom, or whether tyrants can take it over. The Russians have tried very hard with disinformation, control of the media, but the great thing right now is that it's not working. Up until this invasion, it was always a question of to what extent Ukraine had a true, strong national identity. We always thought it did, but the Russians and Putin would say, well, no, it's an integral part of sort of the Russian sphere. Well, guess what? He's learned that's wrong.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.